Luke Carson lived a quiet life on a lonely ranch near the borderlands of Arizona. He was a cowboy, but not the loud kind people expected. He did not brag, did not drink, and did not waste time in noisy places. He liked the early mornings when the world was silent. He liked the evenings when the sun melted into gold behind the mountains. Most days he worked alone fixing fences, caring for horses, or helping the old ranch owner with heavy tasks. People in the nearby town knew him as the calm cowboy who rarely spoke more than needed. But beneath that calm face, Luke carried something he never talked about. He had memories of a different time in his childhood, a time full of laughter, friendship, and warm sunlight near the river. Yet those memories were blurry, almost like they belonged to someone else. Life had moved too fast for him, and with every year of hard work and new responsibilities, those memories slipped further away. He sometimes felt they were fading forever. One warm afternoon, the sky was clear and wide, and the air smelled of dust and dry grass. Luke rode out on his horse Redwind to check the farthest side of the ranch. A storm had passed 2 nights before, and one of the fences had collapsed under the force of strong winds. He carried tools with him: nails, wire, and wooden post, thinking it would take an hour or two to repair everything. As he reached the broken fence, he tied his horse to a nearby tree and began working. He hammered new posts into the ground, wiped sweat from his forehead, and hummed quietly. It was peaceful, the kind of silence he enjoyed. Only the sound of the hammer echoed across the open land. But after a few minutes, he felt something unusual. It was a strange feeling, like someone was watching him. At first, he ignored it. Many times, he imagined things when working alone for too long. But the feeling grew stronger, and he finally lifted his head. That was when he saw her. A woman stood under the shade of a large mesquite tree not far from him. She was still, almost like a quiet part of the landscape. Her long, dark hair was braided with a few small beads woven into it, shining softly in the sunlight. Her clothing was simple, but carried the style of her Apache heritage-like colors that blended naturally with the desert. Her posture was calm, confident, and almost graceful. Her eyes were deep and expressive, watching him with something like recognition. Luke blinked, confused. He had seen strangers around the ranch before, but something about her felt different. She did not look lost or worried. She looked like she knew exactly why she was there. He touched the brim of his hat politely. "Afternoon," he said, keeping his voice steady. The woman stepped out of the shade and into the warm, golden light. There was a gentle smile on her face, but her eyes looked emotional, almost teary. Luke felt a strange tug in his chest. Something familiar yet distant. She spoke his childhood nickname, one that only a few people in the world ever knew. "Hello, little hawk." Luke froze. The hammer slipped from his hand and fell onto the dry ground. No one had called him that in many, many years. His mother used to call him that when he was young because he loved climbing high places. A girl he used to play with had also called him that, but he could not clearly remember her face. Only bits and pieces. A laugh. A pair of bright eyes. A small carved charm. A promise near a river. The woman took a slow breath, as if gathering courage. Then she stepped closer with a soft but steady voice. "Don't you recognize me, cowboy? I'm your childhood love." The world seemed to fall silent. Even the gentle wind paused around them. Luke stared at her, completely stunned. His heart beat faster. His mind tried to search for an answer, but memories hid behind thick fog. He did not understand why his chest felt tight or why his hands suddenly trembled. Finally, a name rose in his mind, soft, warm, like a whisper from a forgotten dream. "Ayanna," he said quietly. Her smile widened, and her eyes glistened with emotion. "You remember?" she whispered. Luke swallowed hard. He remembered, but only pieces. The memories felt like pieces of a story he once loved, but never finished reading. He remembered a little girl with shining eyes, an adventurous spirit, and gentle hands. She had taught him small Apache words, shared berries with him by the river, and showed him the hidden places in the desert. She told him stories from her elders, stories that made him dream big. They had been inseparable, like two small spirits who wandered freely under the wide sky. But one day, without warning, his family had left the town. His father lost work, and everything changed overnight. Luke had been too young to understand. He only remembered crying silently in the back of the wagon while watching the desert fade behind him, and he remembered promising himself he would come back someday. But he never did. Life carried him elsewhere in new towns, new jobs, and harder days. Slowly, the memories blurred until only the feeling of loss remained. Luke stepped closer, forcing himself to look at her clearly. He could see the strength in her face, the kindness in her eyes, and the maturity that years had added. Yet beneath all of that, he could see the same Ayanna, the same gentle spark he once knew so well. "I can't believe it," he murmured. "It's really you," Ayanna nodded softly. "I've been searching for you, for me," he asked, stunned. "Yes?" she said. "I heard you came back near our old land. I wasn't sure if it was true, but something inside me told me I needed to see you. I needed to know if you remembered me, even a little." Luke felt guilt rise in his chest like a heavy stone. "I should have remembered more," he whispered. "I forgot so much." "I'm sorry." Ayanna shook her head gently. "Life takes people in different directions. It happens. What matters is that we meet again now." Her voice was warm, almost healing. She was not blaming him. She simply understood. Luke breathed deeply, trying to settle the storm inside him. Then he looked at the half-repaired fence and felt awkward. I don't know what to say." "Don't have to say anything yet," Ayanna replied softly. "Walk with me. Let us see what time is left behind." He nodded. They began walking slowly across the land. The breeze carried the soft scent of desert flowers, and the sky stretched endlessly above them. Ayanna asked him about his life, how he came to work on the ranch, whether he still drew pictures like he used to, and what happened in the years after he left. Luke answered honestly but simply. He told her about the long road of ranch work, how he traveled from place to place, how he finally settled here because the land felt familiar in a way he could not explain. Ayanna smiled faintly. "Maybe your heart always knew it would return home." "Maybe," Luke said, though he wasn't fully sure. As they walked, they reached a spot near a dry riverbed. Suddenly, Ayanna stopped and pointed toward a lone cottonwood tree, standing tall near the water's edge. "Do you remember this place?" she asked. Luke blinked. Something inside him stirred. "Think so. We used to play here," she said quietly. "We built little houses out of sticks. You taught me how to whistle through a blade of grass. I taught you how to read the shape of bird tracks." Luke smiled slowly, the fog lifting a little. "I remember the bird tracks." "And we sat under that tree," she continued, watching the sky until the stars came out. "Do you remember what you said to me once?" Luke searched his memory but could not find the words. "You said we would always meet again," Ayanna whispered, "no matter where life took us." Luke felt his heart squeeze gently. He had made that promise as a boy with innocent hope. And somehow, she had carried that promise with her all these years. They walked further until they reached a small patch of earth. The dust was soft. Ayanna knelt and brushed the surface with her fingers. A faint carving appeared, 2 sets of initials. Old, faded, but still there. Luke's breath caught. "I made that," he said. "You made it for both of us," she replied. Luke sat beside her, slowly tracing the carving with his fingertips. It felt unreal. Something forgotten had just been returned to him. Something precious. Ayanna watched him with a gentle expression. "Luke," she said softly, "I did not come to bring back the past. I came to see if part of the past still lived." He looked up at her. "It does. It really does." A quiet smile spread across her face. "I'm glad," she whispered. The sun began sinking behind the hills, painting the sky in warm orange and soft pink. The desert glowed, and the world felt peaceful. Luke felt something he hadn't felt in years, a quiet warmth in his chest, a feeling of connection, of being seen and remembered. He realized that the woman beside him was no stranger, no distant dream. She was the girl who once held his heart without even trying. And now she stood before him again as a grown woman, gentle yet strong, carrying all the memories he had lost. As the evening breeze softly touched their faces, Luke understood one thing for sure. Their story, paused long ago, had just begun again. The sun dipped lower behind the distant hills as Luke and Ayanna continued walking across the quiet land. The warm colors of evening spread across the sky like soft paint, filling the air with a calm that made the world feel gentle. Luke felt different from when the day began. A few hours earlier, he was just a quiet cowboy repairing fences. But now, he was walking beside the girl he once cared for deeply, the same girl whose memory he thought he had lost forever. Ayanna walked slowly, her steps light and graceful. Luke noticed how naturally she moved across the land, like someone who understood every sound and every shadow. She carried the spirit of her people, calm, aware, and deeply connected to nature. Luke respected that. He always admired it when they were children, even if he didn't fully understand it back then. They reached a small ridge that overlooked the open valley. The land stretched far and wide, glowing under the evening light. Ayanna stopped near the edge and sat down on a flat rock. She motioned for Luke to sit beside her. He did, feeling a soft breeze brush through his hair. For a moment, they sat quietly, letting the peaceful silence settle between them. Then Ayanna spoke, her voice gentle but steady. "Do you want to know what happened after you left?" Luke nodded slowly. I always wondered, but I didn't know who to ask." Ayanna looked out toward the horizon, her eyes calm yet thoughtful. "The morning after your family left, I went to the river, like we always did. I waited there, holding the small wooden charm you made for me. I thought you would come. I didn't know you had already gone." Luke lowered his eyes, guilt tightening in his chest. Ayanna continued, "I waited the next day, too. And the day after that, my mother told me your family had to leave quickly. She tried to explain that sometimes life changes without giving us time to prepare. But I was young. I didn't understand why my friend had disappeared." Luke remembered the wooden charm. It was a simple carving of a tiny bird, something he made with his small pocket knife back then. He had given it to her, telling her it would bring good luck. He felt a deep ache, knowing she held on to it during that confusing time. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't know how to say goodbye. I didn't even know we were leaving that night. My father told us to pack fast because he found work in another town. Everything happened too quickly." Ayanna nodded gently. "I understand that now. But back then, it felt like losing a part of my world." Luke took a slow breath. "I wish I could have told you something. Anything. You were a child," she said, offering a small, kind smile. "We both were." She looked up at the sky for a moment before continuing. "After you left, I became quieter. I missed our adventures, the way we explored the riverbeds, how we raced our shadows on the hills, how you always tried to teach me little tricks you learned from your mother. You were the friend who made the world feel big and full of possibilities." Luke felt warmth spread through his chest. He didn't realize he had once meant so much to someone. "What did you do after?" he asked softly. Ayanna folded her hands in her lap. "I focused on my family. I helped my mother with daily work. My grandparents taught me stories, traditions, and the ways of our people. I learned how to track animals, how to listen to the land, how to read the sky. These things kept me strong. But even then, there were days I felt lonely, like something inside me was unfinished." Luke listened quietly. Her words touched him deeply. He could understand that kind of loneliness because he carried his own. She continued, "As I grew older, life became busier. I traveled with my relatives to different places, learned skills from elders, met new people. But sometimes when I saw a certain tree or heard a certain bird call, I remembered you. Not every day, not every year, but enough to keep the memory alive." Luke felt his chest tighten. "I didn't know you remembered me so much." Ayanna gave a light, gentle laugh. "How could I forget? You were the boy who made me laugh when I was sad. The one who brought me wildflowers even when the desert was dry. The boy who said we'd always meet again someday." Luke's face warmed with embarrassment and emotion. He didn't remember saying that exact phrase, but it sounded like something a hopeful boy would promise. He looked at her seriously. "I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner. You came back when the time was right," she replied softly. "Life has its own way of leading people. Sometimes we don't see the path until it brings us where we're meant to be." Her words had a quiet strength that Luke admired. It felt like she had grown into someone wise, someone who understood life more deeply than most. He asked her gently, "How did you find out I was living nearby?" Ayanna smiled. "Passing travelers mentioned a quiet cowboy working on a ranch near the old lands. They said he had the same last name as the boy who left years ago. I wasn't sure at first, but something inside me told me to come see for myself." Luke felt humbled. It meant she had made an effort, a long, thoughtful effort to look for him. "I'm glad you followed that feeling," he said honestly. Ayanna studied his face for a moment. "You changed a lot, but your eyes are the same. They still look at the world with quiet care." Luke looked down, feeling both shy and grateful. "And you? You grew into a strong, calm woman. But I can still see the same spark you had as a girl." Ayanna smiled softly. "I'm glad." A long silence passed between them, not uncomfortable, but full of shared understanding. Luke watched the sky turn deeper in color, and he wondered how the years had shaped her life. "Ayanna?" he asked gently. "Was it difficult after I left?" She thought for a moment before answering. "It was, but not in a painful way. More like a missing piece of a puzzle. I lived fully, I learned, I worked, I grew. But a small part of my heart always wondered about you. Where you were. Whether you remembered me. Whether we would ever meet again." Luke felt his throat tighten slightly. He didn't know how to respond, so he simply listened. "And you?" she asked softly. "What happened to you after you left?" Luke leaned back on his hands, staring at the fading horizon. "I traveled a lot. My father worked different ranch jobs. We moved from town to town. After I grew older, I started working on my own. Some years were hard. I worked long hours, saved little, and often felt like I didn't belong anywhere." Ayanna listened with quiet patience. He continued, "There were times I thought of the old place. I didn't remember everything clearly, but I remembered how peaceful it felt here. I remembered the smell of the desert after rain. I remembered a laugh, a soft laugh, maybe yours." Ayanna's expression warmed. "I'm glad you remembered something." Sometimes, Luke admitted, "I told myself that maybe I only imagined that part of my childhood, that maybe it wasn't real. But seeing you now, I know it was real. All of it." She reached out, not touching him, just placing her hand gently near his on the rock. Close enough to show comfort, respectful enough to keep space. "Childhood memories fade," she said, "but true ones return when the heart is ready." Luke breathed deeply, letting her words sink in. The sky slowly turned darker as the first star appeared above them. The air grew cooler, and a quiet calm filled the valley. Luke felt something shift inside him, a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. "Ayanna," he whispered, "why did you really come today?" She looked toward the horizon before answering. "I came to see if the boy I once cared for still existed inside the man you became." Yeah. She turned her eyes to him. "And I think he does." Luke didn't know what to say. Her words touched him deeply. Stirring old feelings he didn't know were still alive. Ayanna continued, her voice quiet but honest. "I didn't come to bring back the past. I came to understand it, to see if our bond meant something even after all the years." Luke nodded slowly. "It does mean something. More than I realized." Ayanna smiled gently, a soft glow in her eyes. "Then maybe we can learn who we are now, not just who we were." Luke felt warmth fill his chest. The idea of rediscovering their connection, of learning about the woman she had become, felt like a chance he didn't want to lose. They sat together for a long time, talking about old memories and sharing quiet moments. The stars grew brighter, the night wrapped around them like a soft blanket. When they finally stood to leave, Luke felt lighter than he had in years. He felt like he had found a missing part of himself, something precious he thought was gone forever. As they walked back toward the ranch, Ayanna spoke softly. "Luke, thank you for listening and for remembering." He looked at her with sincerity. "Thank you for finding me." They walked side by side under the moonlit sky, each step bringing them closer to something new, something gentle, steady and filled with hope. Their past had shaped them. But now, it was their future that waited quietly ahead. The next morning, the ranch looked fresh and peaceful. Soft sunlight touched the grass, and the cool breeze carried the gentle scent of desert plants waking under the new day. Luke stepped out of the barn, stretching his tired arms after an early morning of caring for the horses. His thoughts were still filled with the previous evening Ayana's calm voice, her patient smile, and the quiet truth they shared under the first stars. He still found it hard to believe she had come back into his life, and even harder to believe that she had remembered him so strongly, so clearly for all those years. A part of him felt humbled, almost unworthy, but another part felt grateful, deeply grateful that life had opened a door he never expected. As he checked the saddle straps on Redwind, he heard soft footsteps approaching. He turned and saw Ayana walking toward him. She wore a light shawl around her shoulders, and her hair was braided neatly with small beads catching the sunlight. She greeted him with a warm smile, one that made the ranch feel less lonely. "Good morning, Luke," she said gently. "Morning, Ayana," he replied. Trying not to look too happy but failing a little, she walked closer, her eyes taking in the horses and the small tools around him. "You start your day early." "Ranch life doesn't wait," Luke said, smiling softly. "There's always something to fix or feed." Ayana nodded. "I remember how you were always full of energy as a boy." "I see that hasn't changed." Luke chuckled lightly. "Maybe a little slower now, but still going." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the breeze brushing past them. Ayana reached out a gentle hand to pet Redwind, and the horse lowered its head calmly. Accepting her touch, "He likes you," Luke said. "Animals sense calm hearts," she replied. "Your horse knows you trust me." Luke felt something warm in his chest. "I do," he said softly. Ayana looked up, her eyes meeting his with quiet warmth. "That means a lot." After a moment, she asked, "Would you like to walk again? Maybe visit the old places we haven't seen yet?" Luke wiped his hands on a cloth and nodded. "I'd like that." They walked together along the open plain, the land stretching in gentle waves of grass and dry soil. Birds flew above them in smooth circles, and the sky shone blue without a single cloud. It felt like nature itself was giving them space to understand each other as they walked. Ayana began telling Luke stories from her childhood, stories he missed because he wasn't there. She spoke about the lessons her elders taught her, the trips her family made across the land, and the responsibilities she took on as she grew older. Luke listened carefully, never interrupting. He admired how she carried her culture with pride and respect. She spoke with a quiet strength that made everything she said feel meaningful. "Sometimes, I didn't know if you were still kind, or if life had made you forget the gentle boy you once were." Luke looked down, thinking. "Life was hard sometimes," he admitted. "But I tried not to lose myself completely." Ayana nodded. "I can see that. You still have a warm heart, even if you hide it under a quiet face." Luke felt heat rise to his cheeks. "I'm not used to talking so much," he said honestly, "but with you, it feels easy." Ayana smiled, pleased. "That means our bond didn't fade. It only slept for a while." They continued walking until they reached a small canyon where the wind made pleasant, soft sounds as it passed through the rocks. Ayana sat on a flat stone, and Luke sat beside her. It was peaceful, almost sacred. There she began to speak more seriously. "Luke," she said, her voice steady, "when we were children, our world was simple. We played, we dreamed, and we believed joy would never leave us. But life taught us different lessons." Luke nodded slowly. He understood exactly what she meant. She continued, "People say childhood memories fade, but I think the important ones stay inside us, guiding us even when we don't remember them clearly." Luke looked at her with gentle honesty. "You guided me more than I realized, even when I forgot the past. I think some part of me always searched for the peace I felt with you." Ayana's eyes softened. and some part of me always hoped our paths would cross again. A quiet breeze swept through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of warm earth. Luke felt calm, but also full of emotion. Sitting beside her felt natural, almost like a missing piece, finally placed where it belonged. He asked softly, "Ayanna, what do you hope for now?" Ayanna took a moment to think. Her face was thoughtful, yet peaceful. "I hope for understanding," she said. "I hope to learn who you are now, not only the boy I knew. I hope we can discover if our bond still has a place in our adult lives." Luke felt something tender in his heart. "I want that too," he said quietly. "More than I knew before." Ayanna turned her body slightly toward him. "Luke, I don't want to push anything. I don't expect answers right away, but I want to walk forward with honesty." Luke nodded. "Honesty is all I can give." She smiled gently. "That is enough." They spent the next hours exploring old paths and rediscovering places they once loved. Some areas had changed with time, but others looked almost the same as they remembered. They found a little patch of wildflowers, just like the ones Luke used to gather for her as a boy. Ayanna picked one gently and placed it in his hand. "For the boy you were," she said, he added softly. "And for the woman you became?" Later, they reached the old cottonwood tree where their initials were carved. Ayanna knelt beside the faded marks and touched them lightly. "Even when the carving faded," she said softly, "the memory stayed." Luke sat beside her, feeling the weight of the years between then and now. "These marks are old," he said, "but seeing them makes everything feel real again." Ayanna nodded. "Some memories need only a small sign to return." They watched the sunlight shift through the branches, falling in soft patterns across the ground. Ayanna leaned back against the tree trunk, and Luke sat close, but still respectfully apart. Their silence was warm and full of quiet understanding. After some time, Ayanna turned to him again. "Luke," she said gently, "do you want to stay connected with me? Not because of our past, but because of who we are now." The question hung softly in the air. Luke exhaled slowly. "Yes, I want that very much." Ayanna looked relieved. "Then we can take it slow. We can learn each other again. There is no need to rush. The heart understands its own timing." Luke nodded. "I agree." As the sun began to set again, painting the sky in warm colors, they walked back toward the ranch. Their steps were easy and unhurried. Luke felt lighter with each moment, as if the burden of past years was slowly falling away. When they reached the ranch gate, Ayanna paused and looked at him with gentle certainty. "I will come again tomorrow," she said softly, "if you want me to." Luke met her eyes without hesitation. "I want you to," Ayanna smiled, a smile full of hope and calm warmth. "Then tomorrow, we continue our story." She walked away with quiet grace, her figure blending into the sunset glow. Luke watched her until she disappeared behind the rise of the land. He felt something inside him, settle a peace he hadn't felt in years. He knew their journey wouldn't be perfect or simple, but it would be real, honest, gentle, something worth holding on to that night. Luke lay under the stars outside the barn, staring at the wide sky. The air was cool, and the world was silent except for distant wind. He whispered softly, as if speaking to the stars themselves, "I won't lose her again." And with that quiet promise, Luke let himself dream not of the past he lost, but of the future waiting patiently ahead. A future shared with the woman who knew his heart long before he knew himself. Their story, paused for so long, had begun again with calm steps, gentle words, and a bond that refused to fade.